Next we have Councilmember Bill Spelman. He's serving his third term on the Austin City Council, and I guess you probably feel at home here at the LBJ School. You are a professor here. You teach courses in applied math and statistics, urban policy, public management, and before this discussion, he led the successful effort to pass 2 City of Austin ordinances that address payday limit.
I feel especially comfortable in this building, in this room, because I teach classes all summer long for entering LBJ students. I feel particularly comfortable because Piper and B and Ann are all former students. Alumni Association. I feel a little uncomfortable because everybody on this panel knows more about payday lending than I do. On the other hand, there's a value for what it is I'm doing here, partly to be the clueless guy who keeps asking, well, so what happened next? And she'll tell me. And partly because cities are in a very peculiar position with respect to regulation of payday loans at this particular time, even on this particular day. Last session, some of you already know this better than I do, but let me recap it for those of you who haven't gone through the play-by-play yet. Last session, there was a bipartisan effort to try and regulate, for the first time at least since 2005, the payday lending industry. Had bipartisan support led in part by Ken Craddock, who was not the first guy you would think of as being in favor of regulating an unregulated industry. But he had a personal story, as a lot of people involved in this do. I can't remember who it was a story of, but somebody who knew who had gotten involved in one of these cycles of debt and not been able to get out of it. And he really felt very strongly, at a very emotional level, this is something that needs to be done. This is very much like the background check legislation that just failed in the Senate yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah. So soon as yesterday that failed? Yeah. Same kind of deal. You had some people got together, we had bipartisan support for something which actually made a fair amount of sense. And then it just kind of got nickel and dime. The whole thing fell apart because in addition to bipartisan support, it also had bipartisan non-support. Same thing happened by the payday lending legislation last session. I'm not sure whether it was a joke or whether it was real, but somebody told me there were 181 lobbyists working on behalf of the payday lending industry last session, which would be 1 lobbyist per member of the legislature. I can imagine somebody sort of walking up and saying, I'm Robert, I'll be your lobbyist for the remainder of the session. I'll follow you wherever you go and hand you money whenever I need to get you to do what you got to do. Anyway, it didn't pass. And at the time it did not pass. It was a fairly sensible, it would not have gone as far as I suspect Ann or B or other folks would have wanted to go, not as far as I would have wanted it to have gone, but it was a good start and it would have knocked what I've been saying, the rough edges off of the payday lending industry. But it didn't pass. So I knew very little about the subject until I got a phone call from a fellow named Jerry Allen. Jerry Allen is a banker who happens to be on the Dallas City Council. And like Ken Craddock, he's a Republican, Jerry is. Has he told you that?
No.
He's a Republican. Some of my best friends are Republicans. Now that's true because of Jerry. So Jerry has a story. And in addition, he has this whole set of stories because as a banker, he's had to deal with the usury limits all his life, and he feels it's just a travesty to go over the usury limits. So he was going to do for the city of Dallas what it is that this bipartisan group was unable to do for the state of Texas. And more crafted an ordinance which more or less modeled point by point what that lost statute that never got passed last session and passed it in the Dallas City Council. Became law in the city of Dallas. Well, gosh, if Dallas can do it, sure as heck Austin can do it. I'm feeling a little embarrassed that Dallas beat us to it. So the city of Austin passed a bill a year ago which mirrored the legislation. So now it's the law in the city of Austin. We've been having long conversations with Houston, with San Antonio, with El Paso, and other cities. And although Houston decided not to go that route, San Antonio did. And very recently, in the last 3 months, I think El Paso also passed more or less the same bill. So now you get 4 of the biggest cities of Texas which have done what the state of Texas was unable or unwilling to do. The big question for us during this session, well, the big question should have been, will the state of Texas do this session what they could have done last session? That was never on the table. What was on the table was a considerably weaker regulation. I don't believe at any time that the regulations offered by John Drone and his committee were as strong as those offered by Braddock and previous session, but they were a start. And the critical question is, can we keep them strong enough that it will make more sense for us to support these things statewide? Or will they become so weak that it will make better sense for Dallas and Austin and the other cities to want to kill those bills because we've got so much stronger stuff that we can do locally? From the city of Austin's point of view, there's a real value to having a statewide legislation, which is at least got some teeth in it. Because we got a lot of people in Austin who can just go across the city line and go to Pflugerville, they can go to Westlake Hills. There's a lot of places, a lot of people who live close enough to the city line that's not going to be any trouble at all for them to find a payday lender who is not bound by the city of Austin regulations and get a 500 or 600% APR loan. We'd like to prevent that, and if there was a way we could do it, we could. I don't know exactly where we are right now at this moment. I'm not sure anybody is. But from my point of view, and from the point of view of Dallas, San Antonio, and El Paso, we had a long conversation about this last week. If the bill that eventually is available for us, available for passage, is not sufficiently strong, we feel that we're better off being against it and trying to kill it. Or if we can't do that, if we can persuade, for example, Representative Villarreal or Senator Corona to insert something that says that cities are not preempted from acting just because the state legislature has acted. That would allow cities like Dallas and Austin, which are in a financially different position than other cities around Texas, and I'll explain why later if the issue comes up, to be able to do for our constituents what our constituents need, which is a very different situation, very different from what the constituents elsewhere in Texas need. I have more to say about that if you're interested, but this is a peculiar situation where a city council and 4 city councils around the state of Texas are actually involved in banking regulation. I don't know any place else in the country where that's true.